The report is due Friday. It is a 2-hour job. She knows it is a 2-hour job because she has written this exact report 4 times before. She will start it Thursday night. She already knows this. On Monday, she opens the file, reads the first line, and closes it. On Tuesday, she reorganizes her folder structure. On Wednesday, she rereads the brief and highlights 3 sentences she had already highlighted last quarter. On Thursday at 9 p.m., she opens the file again, writes the report in 2 hours, and submits it at 11. 5 days, 2 hours of work. The other 4 days and 22 hours were not rest. They were not laziness. They were something else entirely. Something that has a name. In 1955, a British naval historian named Cyril Northcote Parkinson wrote one sentence in an essay for The Economist that would outlive nearly everything else published that year. Work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. Simpler version, whatever time you give a task, the task will use all of it. Parkinson was not a psychologist. He was not a management consultant. He was a history professor at the University of Malaya in Singapore, and his specialty was the British Royal Navy. What bothered him was not the Navy's ships, it was the Navy's desks. Between 1914 and 1928, the number of capital ships in the Royal Navy dropped by 68%. The number of officers and sailors dropped by 32%. Fewer ships, fewer people at sea. The Navy was shrinking, but the number of Admiralty officials, the people on land pushing paper about the ships, grew by 78%. The British Colonial Office told the same story. Between 1935 and 1954, its staff grew from 364 to 1,661, an increase of over 400%, while the actual colonies it was supposed to manage were vanishing one by one. By the time the Colonial Office reached its highest number of employees in history, there were almost no colonies left. Parkinson found 2 forces driving the growth. First, officials prefer to hire subordinates, not rivals. If your workload feels heavy, you do not ask for a colleague who might outshine you. You ask for 2 assistants who report to you. Second, those assistants create work for each other. Reports about reports. Meetings to plan meetings. The system feeds itself. He meant the essay to be funny. It was. It was also one of the most accurate descriptions of how organizations behave ever put to paper. But the law does not stay in offices. It does not care about offices. It runs anywhere a container exists. Houston, Texas built the Katy Freeway to connect its western suburbs to downtown. 6 lanes. By the 1990s it was jammed. By 2004 it was ranked the 2nd worst traffic bottleneck in the country. The fix was obvious. More lanes. The state of Texas spent $2.8 billion widening it. When they finished, the Katy Freeway had 23 lanes. It was the widest highway on Earth. For a few months, commute times improved. Then the lanes filled. By 2014, morning commute times had jumped by 30% and afternoon commute times by 55% compared to just after the expansion. The road was wider. The drive was longer. Economists Gilles Duranton and Matthew Turner studied this pattern across every major American city and published their findings in the American Economic Review in 2011. Their conclusion was clean enough to sound like a law of physics. A 1% increase in highway capacity produces a 1% increase in traffic. They called it the fundamental law of road congestion. More road, more cars. The road does not reduce traffic. The road is a container. Traffic expands to fill it. Goldfish release growth-inhibiting hormones into their water. In a small bowl, those hormones concentrate and the fish stays small. 3 or 4 inches. Put the same fish in a pond and the hormones dilute. The fish grows, a foot long sometimes. Same genetics, same species, different container. Parkinson was writing about bureaucrats and deadlines. He accidentally described fish. In 1966, psychologists Elliot Aronson and Harold Gerard ran a study at the University of Texas that they titled Beyond Parkinson's Law. They gave subjects a simple task. Some received just enough time to finish. Others received far more time than the task required. The subjects with excess time did not finish early. They did not bank the surplus. They used all of it. They worked slower. They second-guessed their answers. They added steps that did not exist in the tight deadline version. The quality of their work did not improve. Only the pace changed. The task expanded to fill the time. But Aronson and Gerard found something stranger. When those same subjects were later given a second, completely different task with no time pressure at all, the people who had previously been given excess time still worked slower than the ones who had been given tight deadlines the first time around. The expansion had carried over. The container shaped the habit, and the habit outlasted the container. Most people hear Parkinson's law and think it means procrastination. It does not. Procrastination is delaying the start. Parkinson's law is about what happens to the work itself. You can start a task immediately and still have it fill 5 days. You are not sitting idle. You are researching more than you need to, revising sentences that were fine, reorganizing sections that did not need reorganizing, emailing a colleague a question you already know the answer to, because the time exists to ask it. The task does not wait for you to waste time. The task itself grows. It becomes more complex in your mind simply because the space is there for complexity to move into. Aronson's subjects did not just take longer, they rated the same task as harder than people who were given less time to do it. The extra time did not just change how they worked, it changed how big they believed the job was before they started. Your weekend has 48 hours. You have one errand to run. It will take 30 minutes. Watch what happens to Saturday. The errand does not get done at 9 in the morning, freeing the rest of the day. The errand becomes a project. The project needs preparation. The preparation needs a specific window. The window gets pushed because something else filled the morning, something you cannot remember by Sunday. The errand happens at 4 p.m. The remaining hours fill with activity that feels productive and leaves no trace by nightfall. You did not waste your weekend, you filled it. Every free evening you have ever had was a container, and you filled it with whatever was available, not whatever was important. That is not a character flaw. That is Parkinson's law, running your schedule the same way it runs government payrolls and highway systems and fish tanks. Parkinson noticed the pattern with money too. In 1960, he published what he called his second law: expenditure rises to meet income. You got a raise last year. You do not have more money saved. The spending expanded. The container got bigger. The contents grew to match. The most common misread of the law is also the most dangerous one. People discover Parkinson's law and decide it means every task should be given the absolute minimum time possible. That misses the point entirely. A 2-hour report given 30 minutes does not produce a 2-hour report faster. It produces a broken report. The law describes expansion, not compression. It says a 2-hour task given 5 days will absorb 5 days. It does not promise a 5-day task crammed into 2 hours will survive. The container shapes the work, but the work still has a minimum size. The law tells you that you are almost certainly giving the container too much room. It does not tell you to remove the container altogether. If Parkinson's law is real, and 70 years of evidence across bureaucracies, highways, biology, and controlled experiments says it is, then time is not a resource you spend. It is a container you fill, and you have been filling every container you have ever been given, not because you are inefficient, because that is what containers do. They get filled. Your work hours get filled. Your free hours get filled. Your vacation gets filled. Not with the things you planned for. With whatever expands fastest. The law does not switch off when you learn about it. You now know the pattern, and tomorrow you will still stretch a 2-hour task across an entire afternoon. The knowing changes nothing. The container is still there. You are still inside it.